Hello and welcome to another edition of Florida Sportsman Action Spotter Podcast. I'm Captain Rick Riles. Hey, we're rolling into a new year, and that means a lot of changes. My goodness, we've had some wintertime fronts come through. Has that fired up our sailfish bite? Do we have clear enough water to spot redfish yet? There's a lot of things we look forward to in the dead of winter. Let's find out whether or not they're happening. We're going to start our trip with a quick stop in Nosara, Costa Rica to get the word from Craig Sutton about their fishing over there. Then we'll hit the northeast corner of the state, talk to Captain David Voorhees, work our way down the East Coast, through the Keys, up the West Coast, and out the Panhandle, getting the latest in fishing reports. This week, just like every week, the Florida Sportsman Action Spotter Podcast is brought to you by Yamaha, by Shimano, by Nosara Paradise, by Young Boats, and by Tournament Master Chum. Now let's get our trip around the state fired up. It's time to talk fishing. And you know what? I got a question for the pros tonight. I want to know what their New Year's resolution is. I've got one. Hey, I just hit my 70th birthday. I know I'm wrapping up my last few summers of offshore fishing. This year, if I get to spend the summer off of Stewart, I want my crew, my grandsons, I want my crew to release 100 sailfish between June 1st and the end of August. We'll see whether or not we can pull it off, but that's my resolution. So let's get started with a quick call to Craig Sutton with Nosara Paradise Fishing. Let's get tonight's party started by making a stop in Nosara, Costa Rica to check in with the purveyor of sport fishing there, one Mr. Craig Sutton. Craigie, how we doing?
Man, Ricky, I'm so good, I can't stand it. If I was any better, I'd be in prison.
Don't say that. That's not a pleasant thought. But, not a pleasant thought. The kingfish might like to see you there, but nobody else would.
Yeah. Well, it's I'll tell you what, I thought the mahi bite was going to slow down, and it did about 2 weeks ago. I don't know if I told you, but we had 2 days where it was kind of slow.
Right.
We found a really good water about 30 miles offshore, but that went away, and we went back to just catch them everywhere. I mean, we're having just amazing catches, and instead of the 15s to 25s, we're getting a lot of 30s and 40s. We got one on the Adventure that, the fish is about 48 inches long.
That's a good one.
He's a nice big bull, man. And the marlin and the sail. So, a bunch of yellowfin. No real big ones yet, but they're going to be there. It's just a matter of, a month or two. We'll start getting them big 200-pounders.
Hey, Craigie, how much technology do your guys get to take advantage of down there? Can they look at sea surface temperature charts and stuff like that?
They can, but they don't. They're fishing every day.
Yeah.
So and then they get reports depending on which direction the current's going. They get reports from the south or from the north, from May through October. But they're on, and this time of year the schools that are coming up from south, they get hammered on it. They really do. They get a little break right before they get to us for maybe a day or two, and then they get to our area, and then the guys in Tamarindo and north of us in the Flamingo start hammering them pretty hard. But it's boy, it's about as good as it can be. And I tell you, we got last week, I think we had 4 marlin releases, and 3 or 4 we had plugged up and come unplugged on us. And, of course, there are always a few come into the spread that don't get the hooks in them.
Mm-hmm. It's funny to hear you.
I will tell you this, we had 2 bad weather days this last week. I meant to tell you that.
That doesn't happen very often. That's
I know.
That's
a rarity.
That's your annual supply is what that is.
I know. Last year we had 2 all total year, but in the first day we pulled the plug, we could have fished a little later because sometimes our wind will blow early and then dissipate, around 8 or 9. And it did that day around 10, but they had already taken everything off the boats and stuff. But the next day, which was Thursday of last week, it was blowing hard all day long. But it's just part of it, man.
Golly, that doesn't happen very often. That's for darn. In all my years of going down there, I've never lost a day, never threatened to lose a day. I mean, it's just been gorgeous one day after another. Hey, Craigie, you got a New Year's resolution for this year for your fishing?
Catch more fish, fish more.
Yep.
Quit worrying about work all the time.
Yep.
I mean, I got to fish here yesterday, so it's been a little slow for me this year as far as up here, a number of trips, but it's okay. I'm getting out there a few.
Yep. Craigie, from June 1st to the end of August, I want to release 100 sailfish off Stewart this year. Think I can do it?
Well, I swear to you, man. I think if anybody can do it, you can. How many trips you going to make?
As many as I can. So I guess I think I've got the same goal you do then. My goal this year is to fish more days. I'm going to need some days to hit 100 in a 90-day period, no doubt.
Well, I'd like to reach 100 marlin releases within the next couple years. I got a ways to go. I got about 15 to go. But, me personally, and I don't really care about my personal records as long as the clients are catching them. But, man, it's like, I just haven't had a good year. I had 27 releases or 26 releases. But it hadn't been that for me lately. And, a lot of it down there, I have to fish the afternoon.
Right.
I have to work in the morning.
Yeah.
It hurts me really, especially June, July, and August when we're catching tons of it. But, I do have a job. I got a job.
We talk about it all the time, and Craigie, the problem with leaving the dock at that time of day, and when I was running the Dos Amigos for Mr. Barry Vickers for so many years, he used to love to leave at 8:30, 9 o'clock, like that, which it's his boat, Cap. That's fine. But, boy, right. you better guess right, because if you find yourself 15 miles out of position, you're in a lot of trouble. There ain't no doubt, and I've done that many a time.
Me too. I do that more times than I find the right spot. So that's for sure.
That's right. Cap, we appreciate it as always. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
I'll be waiting with bells on.
Craig Sutton from Nosara Paradise Fishing. If you haven't been there, you need to go. Time to start on the state of Florida. We'll start up in the northeast corner with Captain David Voorhees. Skip, how we doing?
Hey, buddy. Doing pretty good.
Good. Tell me how your fishing is.
Well, I tell you, it's a lot like the weather, man. It's up and it's down, and you got to sort of ride these waves. That's the one thing about Northeast Florida that the guys down in South Florida don't really have to worry so much about is that really, really changing water temperature. And just in a matter of a month or so, we've seen that water temperature change as much as 10 degrees. So we've seen a 10 degrees fluctuation in the water temperature. Now, we don't see those kind of fluctuations in the summertime, and you can usually, tell what the water temperature is just by the surf temperature. But in the wintertime, the surf temperature a lot of times can be totally different than the backwater temperatures. And sometimes the backwater temperatures can get a lot warmer than what you see in the surf, and just vice versa. But you've got to pay attention to that water temperature. We've seen it go down as low as 50 degrees and then as much up into 60, 61 degrees. It got all the way up 61 degrees, which was really good. And lo and behold, we get another little cold snap and it dropped it back into the 50s. So you really got to pay attention to that. And it makes for some tough fishing. Talk to some captains that went out the last couple of days and they really struggled. They're seeing fish, they're finding fish, they're seeing them on their sonar, but they were really having a tough time getting them to bite, even on the live bait. And one thing I talk about is you got to you got to fish slow, but you don't dead stick this time of year because you got to go find the fish. The fish aren't going to come to you. You got to go to the fish. And I want to stress that. I've said that 2 or 3 times already, but I want to stress that with wintertime fishing, where it's totally different when you're fishing that really, really hot weather. Those fish will move and come to you and find that scent. So you can use that dead crab, dead shrimp, and those fish are going to come to you. In cold water, cold weather, they don't move that much. But you got to go to them, so that means you got to keep your bait moving, but you got to move it slow. And when you do get that bite, It's going to be very faint. You've got to be a very tight line. The braided line really comes in handy this time of year, and you got to let them eat it. You got to let them take it and run with it and eat it, and before you try to set that hook. I'm seeing a lot of guys make the mistake of trying to set the hook too early. Now, last week I talked about finding a pattern, figuring out a pattern. In the first part of this, I talked about you've got to establish a library. In other words, you've got to develop a lot of good locations to fish. And this is, offshore too. It's the same as offshore. Inshore, same way. The more you fish, the more you're going to come up with these locations, So when you get into the wintertime, when the fishing gets tough, you got to try to pattern what's going to make these fish bite. So once you've established that library, your next move, of course, now you got to remember, you got to have a good understanding of your fish. Well, I like to start by figuring out, one, are the fish shallow or are they deep? So I go from deep water to shallow water, back and forth, and to see if I'm picking something up. If I'm catching them more in deep water than I am in shallow water, I'm going to concentrate on the deep water. And then the other thing I like to do is decide how fast do they want it. Do they want it really fast or do they want it dead slow? So you got to change your speed up, but you got to remember, you got to change that depth. Don't be stuck in just shallow water certain times. You got to move the deep water. You got to move the shallow water. So developing a pattern these fish, you got to keep changing.
Very well said. Very well said. And the bottom line, the thing I think, David, that makes wintertime the toughest is the fact that once the water cools, the metabolism slow down and the fish don't eat as much, do they?
You can get on fish. I talked to captains today, and they were on tons of fish. They could see them, but they just weren't eating.
Right.
And they'll go to feeding sometimes, and I know this from having koi and koi ponds. When it gets wintertime, you can't feed those fish because the food, if you throw food out for them, it's just going to sit there. It's going to spoil. It's going to rot, and it's going to create a mess. So you got to figure out how often these fish feed. And I would see sometimes I would feed my koi maybe once a week.
As opposed to summertime every day, right?
Even twice a day.
Well, there you go. I mean, there's your difference. Yep. David, that's
an
outstanding report and very insightful. Guys need to come up with a plan, and they need to come up with a library. You're exactly right. Please tell me we can check with you next week. I think we got a little warmer weather ahead the rest of this week. I think we may see a little change between now and then.
We are. We're going to see this temperature rise this week. And like I said, don't get out too early. Give it a few days to warm up before you jump out on the water. Let those shallow waters, those flats warm up. But keep changing. Just because it's a real warm day and you're not seeing them up on the flat, don't hesitate to go to deep water.
You got it. Thank you, Cap. We appreciate it.
Tight lines, Ricky.
The year was 1953 when one of the true pioneers of big game fishing just hung it up. No, it wasn't any of our podcasters. It was none other than Ernest Hemingway. I just don't want to do it anymore, he's credited with saying. The tackle has become so sophisticated, the fish just don't have a chance. Can you imagine walking him through the aisles of Strike Zone Fishing and showing him the latest and greatest from Shimano? Can you imagine handing him a Saragusa spinner that weighs less than his bait did and could put more torque on a rampaging tuna than the giant old reels of his day? Now, Ernest, I'm afraid you left us way too early. The fights with great fish still go on today, and sometimes we still get beat. But if I were a sea monster of your day, I think I'd still rather do battle with you than face the tools that Shimano has stocked in Strike Zone Fishing 68 years later. Our thanks to David Bories for a great Northeast Florida report. Now, let's head on down the coast and check in with my favorite little East Coast fishing village. That, of course, would be Stuart, Florida. And that's where Captain John Earhart lives. John, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Buddy, glad to have you. I think you guys had the Pelican Yacht Club tournament since we talked, right?
Yeah, that just took place. I like they did pretty good this tournament. The total stats was 163 sailfish over the course of 5 days. And I think the top boat caught 21 sailfish to win the tournament.
Who won it? Do you remember?
That was the Locusea.
Okay. I got you. Okay, well, that's fine. What else has been going on besides sailfish?
They've been catching a lot of blackfin tuna and some nice ones too, 15 to 25 pounders. A lot of the guys that were fishing the tournament, they were fishing a little ways north of the Fort Pierce Inlet because the tournament, launches out of Fort Pierce there. And we're having a problem that they were actually complaining about catching 20-pound blackfin tunas. But I don't know about you, but I'll welcome a 20-pound blackfin tuna onto my boat.
Yeah, I'll welcome him to my grill any day. That's for sure.
There's been a few mahis mixed in, some wahoos as well, but mostly right now everybody's trying to catch the sailfish, and that's been 90 to 180 feet of water, and that's been anywhere from West Palm Beach all the way up to Cape Canaveral. But most of the people are kind of focusing right around Stewart and Fort Pierce right now, hoping to intercept the big body of migrating sailfish that we typically see during the month of January.
Well, if the winning boat had 21, they fished 3 days, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, certainly not bad. I'll take a 7-day anytime. Well, that's
you and me both. I mean, that's pretty good numbers. I mean, it could be a lot better, but it could also be a lot worse. So, I mean, 163 sailfish for 5 days of fishing, that's pretty good.
That's pretty darn good. That's pretty darn good. Anything going on inshore down there? Is your sheephead bite started?
Yeah, the sheephead fishing's been pretty steady. Both in the river, along the beach. A lot of Spanish mackerel out along Peck's Lake. Bluefish have been mixed in, so definitely want to have some wire leaders tied on. Pompano have been pretty steady both on the beach and in the river, using goofy jigs and or rigs tipped with fish bites, or sand fleece has been doing the trick both in the river and along the beach. So, I mean, it's been pretty good fishing. When the water temps warm up a little bit next month, we can expect to start catching a bunch of snook again. But for right now, we're more focusing on the sheepshead, pompano, and black drum this month.
Gotcha. Okay. How does your Spanish mackerel run look? Is it pretty strong?
It's been all kind of all over the place. When the water clears up along the beach, it's been hell's bells, so to speak. I mean, we've been catching a limit pretty easily, but wind switches to the east and the water gets all churned up along the beach, it seems like it's shutting the Spanish mackerel bite down.
Sure.
So I've been checking the inlet cams in the mornings, and if the water looks nice and clean on the inlet cam, I mean, it's a go. You're going to catch a limit of Spanish mackerel.
Gotcha. Okay. John, that's great advice for the guys who want to go out there. Ooh, do I love making a Spanish mackerel salad. Using Spanish mackerel instead of tuna, buddy, I promise you'll never open a can of tuna again. Cap, we always appreciate it. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
Yes, sir. I look forward to hearing from you next week.
You got it, Captain John Earhart. Hey, it's finally fall, and how many of us have been waiting for the magic of the mullet run to start? There are literally miles of mullet moving along just about every area of Florida coastline. What you need to cash in on the tarpon, snook, reds, trout, sharks, etc. that are feeding on the poor fingerlings is the perfect mullet imitation. Well, for my money, you can skip all the high-dollar made-in-China mullet imitators. For me and all the podcasters I've talked with, the perfect mullet imitation is made right here in Stewart, Florida, and it's the D.O.A. Bait Buster. Mark Nichols, the owner and manufacturer of D.O.A., spent years designing different bait busters to swim shallow, medium, or deep. What makes the bait buster so special? I'll tell you what I think. I think it's the tail. If your bait buster is moving, the tail is flapping. No predator can stand that tail flapping in his face. The D.O.A. Bait Buster. It's the perfect mullet run bait. Our thanks to John Earhart for a great South Florida report. Now, we're going to hop on over to 10,000 Islands and check in with Captain Steve Dahl. Steve, how are you?
Oh, fantabulous.
Yeah. You never get cold down there like we do, buddy. It's been cold up here in Jacksonville.
Well, I guess it's all relative. I can count on one hand, probably in the last 20 years, how many times I've actually had frost on my windshield. This 2 days ago, I had ice on my windshield.
How about that?
Legitimate ice. Where I literally had to, warm up the car.
That's funny.
So,
honest to gosh, to give you an idea how stupid I am, I'm going to do the radio show a couple Saturday mornings ago, and it is like 26, I think. And I get curious, and I wonder, I wonder if the water in my windshield washer fluid froze. I think I'll push the button and spray some on my windshield. Steve, that was not a good idea.
How'd that turn out for you?
Not well. Not well. Like a lot of my fishing trips, not well.
Yes, sir.
All right, buddy, what's going on? What's going on with the fishing in 10,000 Islands?
Well, this time of year, you got to really prepare for just what we're talking about, these cold fronts, and they're going to happen. It's inevitable, and you're going to get them probably every 10 to 14 days is kind of what I've always, kind of the rule of thumb for me. And, that kind of also, so you got some challenges there. You never really, you want to fish on the front end of a front. The back end of the fronts always generally bring some wind and high skies and, those post-front conditions a day or two after, that stuff passes, usually means generally some slower fishing, so you got to, really slow down and, the disciplined angler can make that happen. And, if you've got some folks on your boat, with the grandkids or the kids, that can be a challenge, making anybody slow down while fishing. I'm the same, but I'm wired the same way. I hate slowing down. I like to run and gun, and I'm all about efficiency. I try to fish as many spots as I possibly can in a given day and, kind of go. And that's hard for me. And this is the time of year where it really makes you do that. But when you do that, boy, do you learn a lot. I mean, you really do. And if you take your time, especially on the inshore side, you find all the little subtleties, the famed, spots on top of spots. Even on the nearshore bite, you find that as well. And, it's those spots on spots that can make the difference. Those little breaks, you might be fishing a flat that has, boy, that's a lot deeper pothole than I ever imagined it was, just because you took the extra time to kind of fish that area.
Right.
And, little subtleties like that during cold fronts make all the difference in the world, and you combine that with the wintertime low tides, in our region, for the next 3 months, we get 2 daily tide cycles, and the lowest of those two are, super low, especially around a full or new moon, and they happen during the daytime hours. So we don't have a lot of water to play with, especially in the backcountry. So the fish got to go somewhere, and that's kind of what's happening. We're approaching this full moon here, or new moon rather, and those fish post front, they're going to pull off. Going to go a little bit deeper water. So if you're used to fishing these flats and, areas like that, trout are a perfect example of this. And I've noticed it with redfish too in more recent years, just because I'm trying to pay a little bit more attention. And, trout are so predictable. They'll be on the flat, when the weather's stable, you can certainly catch them in a little bit deeper passes, but they're always in the deeper areas when, you get a low tide and post-front conditions, and it can be a banner day because the fish are concentrated. There's less water out there to play with, and they got to go somewhere. And that's where they're going, that first break. So in our area, we've got lots of big, I call them passes, but, if you really look at a chart, they almost look like rivers. They have current. And when all the water is pouring out of the bays and there's nothing really left and navigable, those fish exit the bays and they're going to the nearest adjacent pass. Mm-hmm. And they're sitting in there and they're waiting to push back up when the tide's right. But if you can catch it on a low tide and slow down, you're going to do some damage. This is where we really in wintertime catch a ton of trout throwing like a 3/8 ounce bucktail jig, and just a thumbnail sized piece of shrimp, and let that thing get all the way to the bottom. And I prefer, just because I even though I'm slowing down, I like kind of a pop, let it flutter. So, with your rod tip upwards, pop, more of a jerking motion, then let it flutter. And 9 out of 10 times the bite's going to happen on the drop. And that may seem very fast for super cold water, but I also think those fish are positioned right there on that break in that first deep water, and it's action bite. I think you're putting it right in their face, so location I think is paramount. And you can certainly crawl that jig back or, drag a regular shrimp on a circle hook through that stuff, and you'll probably get bit. But I kind of like that, reaction bite, because they kind of tend to thump it pretty hard, and you can get reds doing that. And Even black drum will hit that too. So that's kind of what we're faced with right now in the backcountry. We had some winds. We didn't really get offshore like we wanted to. Prior to the below here, we had really good success with some, those sheeps that are all over, mature sheeps that 4, 5, 6 pound fish are all
good
over,
fish, boy.
the rocks, and we're not talking far, we're fishing 25 feet of water, 30 feet of water, just outside Marco Island, and even a little bit of south of Chukowski. So you got plenty of those out there. Any public chart will show you all that stuff. And, in the mix, pay attention. There's cobia around. We haven't seen a ton of mature fish, but a lot of juvenile fish. And if you haven't caught one before, just like catching them like I do, be at the ready for that. They're willing to eat. So,
yeah, don't leave the dock without a jig on a rod ready, dedicated just for that. Steve, I had David Bories said one of the most illuminating things tonight, and it's been on my mind ever since then. He used to be a koi farmer. All right. You know what a koi is, of course. All right.
Yeah.
In the summertime, he fed his koi twice a day. In the wintertime, he fed them once a week. And if he fed them more than that, the food would rot and make the water bad. Because that's all they need.
Go. So,
doesn't that just...
So you talk, that's it. That's exactly it. I didn't know that, but that's a perfect depiction of what we are going through in wintertime fishing, and that's why I like that reaction bite, because I don't necessarily think their metabolism is such that they're willing to eat. But if you antagonize them, it's the best word I could use. You put it right in their face, and it just looks like a natural falling, shrimp or a bait coming right in their face. They're going to eat it. Yeah. It's just their instinct. They just don't want to travel far for it.
Yep. Excellent point.
That's a perfect example.
Yep. Hey, you got New Year's resolution for this year when it comes to fishing?
Yeah, I do. This year, I kind of set my sights on a couple different things. I actually got 2. I want to do a little bit more bucket list trips for myself personally. As I get older, there's some waters I just, really want to explore and, kind of do some different things. And I tend to take a fishing vacation or 2 every year. And this year, I think I'm going to, break out the communion money, I think, and try to spend some of it and do some, higher end trips or, different destinations. The other thing is every year I try to set some type of goal of learning, on the water. And I'm a big believer of that. My biggest thing that I've always talked about, and, we've talked about for years now, Rick, is, fish the moment, not the memory. And this year I'm going to, really challenge myself to really, really fish artificials with clients. That's my new thing. I think we had a lot of success with that, post-hurricane here, because we just aren't having the boat traffic in certain parts of the 10,000 islands. Certain parts were getting pounded, but, there's some really good opportunities to, fish artificials. And I think a lot of captains kind of shy away from that, not in a bad way by any means, but we've proven that we can catch more fish with live bait or just bait in general. And it's an easier way to fish,
When you got people for one day, it's very tempting to take the easiest way possible.
It is. And, we're always on, our report card's always out there for evaluation. But, I think if you get the right anglers and, maybe after a morning of, catching them on live bait, hey, you guys want to try something different? Be a little more sportsman, try to challenge yourself, a little bit. I think that's what I'm going to try to, focus on more, because I've been doing that for a long time personally, and I just really enjoy it. Fooling a fish with a piece of plastic or, a piece of hard or soft. It's the kind of the coolest thing in the world to me,
Sure it is.
Puts a lot more onus on the angler. So that'd be one, those are my 2, is do a lot more fishing and different places, and certainly challenge my clients more with artificials.
Well, I have set a goal for myself. My grandsons.
What do you got?
My grandsons comprise my crew in the summertime. They all get out of school and come and spend the summer fishing with me off of Stewart. I want to, because Steve, I got to tell you, I turned 70 this week, buddy. And
yeah, you did. Happy birthday, by the way.
I mean, this might be, every year might well be the last one that I can take getting beat up on that ocean every day. So this year, from June 1st till the end of August, I want us to release 100 sailfish. So we'll
that's a good number. Well, that's your jam. I don't have any doubts you can do it.
We'll see if we can do it. We'll find it out. I'm going to challenge them all. If they do it, they each get $100 bill for doing it. So they'll be happy with that. Cap, I appreciate it very much, and I look forward to talking with you next week, if that's all right.
Oh, I can't wait, Rick.
Thanks, Steve. Our thanks to Steve Dahl for a great 10,000 Islands report. Now let's move up into Southwest Florida and check in with Snook Stamp Charters, the best charter service there, Captain Greg Stamper. Greg, how we doing?
Doing okay, Rick. Doing okay. It's starting to warm up a little, which is a nice surprise.
Yep. I'm all for that. I do not do cold well. Tell me about your fishing this week.
All right, so I did get out twice this week. We had very cold water, and it was really mucked up because we had some very strong winds. But we went after the topics that we would normally go after when it's going to be tough. We started with some of the stuff on the docks, these early morning tides. We started on the docks. We were using small pieces of shrimp on like 2-aught circle hooks just to see how many sheepshead were there and how big they were. And we ended up getting about a half dozen nice ones that were probably, I don't know, 3 pounds, maybe 4 pounds.
Nothing wrong with that, Cap. Nothing wrong with that.
Yep. And ironically, I don't know if they're around in a big number, but we also picked up one black drum that was about 4 or 5 pounds. So hopefully those things are coming in the back days again as well.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah.
All right. What else is going on down there?
Well, the red fishing was just okay. We did give it a go for about an hour or two each day to see what would happen. We did catch 2 small fish that were about 18, 19 inches, but we're literally fishing in mud. So you can't do any sight fishing. All you can do is kind of rely on what you know that's there now, where these little paths are, where they stand next to grass, and try and use small pieces of shrimp. And we're breaking the shrimp in half. That's how we were picking up the little reds. They didn't want to eat a whole shrimp, and they didn't want to eat any cut baits, because I did have some ladyfish.
Yeah, Greg, I was saying earlier, one of the most illuminating comments that I've heard in a long time, I was talking with Captain David Voorhees earlier in the report, and he used to be a koi farmer. And he said in the summertime, he fed his koi twice a day. In the coldest part of the wintertime, he fed them once a week. And if he tried to feed them twice a week, the other batch of food would sink to the bottom and rot and ruin the water. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, that makes sense. They're lethargic.
Yep, I mean, that's crazy. Fish just don't eat as much in the wintertime. They don't have to.
No, they don't. Their metabolism drops significantly. You really don't see them moving around a lot. I mean, we don't have real clean water right now. So sometimes when it's cold, I can get up on these flats that have the darker bottom, and I'll see them in there moving around. Not fast, just moving around. And sometimes you can pluck 1 or 2 in there. But it's a real lazy bite, and they just kind of pick it up and nibble on it. And you're like, yeah, you ate it. Go ahead and set the hook.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. Cap, we appreciate it as always. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
Absolutely, Rick. Tight lines.
Thanks, Greg. Captain Greg Stamper from Snook Stamp Charters.
You know what Yamaha Outboards love? The genuine formula and consistency of Yamalu marine engine oils.
What?
Outboards are subjected to punishing conditions like high loads, salt, and humidity, a mix that automotive oils can't handle. Yamalu full synthetic and marine performance formulas are certified to protect against friction and corrosion for reliable performance every time. Find Yamalu marine oils at your nearest Yamaha Outboard dealer. Locate them at yamahaoutboards.com/dealers. Yamaha, reliability starts here.
Hey, Raj, being consistent is a mark of a quality product. If you've been Florida's #1 chum for over 10 years, there's got to be a reason.
For 10 years, Tournament Master Chum has lived up to his name.
That's why more tournament pros insist on Tournament Master than any other chum. It's the only chum with menhaden milk mixed right in. That means it gets the scent out faster and deeper than any other brand of chum. It comes in a grind size for every species from kingfish to catching bait. Your fishing time is way too precious to you second-rate chum. Bring the action to you by insisting on Tournament Master chum. It's worth every penny.
When you're ready for the finest in custom-made flat spay or inshore-offshore hybrids, you are ready to meet the Young family in Inglis, Florida. For over 21 years, the Young family has built custom boats one at a time for every type of fishing. Nothing can sneak up on a flat quite like the Gulf Shore flats boats, and I've never fished a better hybrid than the Young 24s and 27s. Rob Young is a naval architect who takes tremendous pride in each and every build for each and every customer that wants their boat custom built exactly the way they want it. Is it time for you to move up? Are you ready to own the finest boat built? Then you need to visit the Young Boat facility in Inglis, Florida, or check them out online at youngboats.com. Now, let's move up to West Central and check in with one Ray Markham. Cap, how we doing?
I'm falling out.
You're what? You're falling out?
I'm thawing out.
Thawing out.
I mean,
okay.
After last week's cold weather, things are finally starting to shape up. I ended up getting a cold towards the end of last week, and I'm still trying to shake the rest of it off. But things are looking really good from all the guys I've been talking to. The water temperature's rising, and I think the fish are getting a lot more acclimated to the passing fronts. So instead of the fish trying to run from here to Hell's Half Acre to get back to where they need to be or should be, they're pretty much there. They're not venturing too far away from the warm spots that they've been at. And when they do, it's a nice sunny day, and they get out in the shallows and eat. So it's all been good in that respect. And the guys that finally have gotten offshore to do some fishing, with the windy weather kind of out of here for a little bit, they've been doing exceptionally well with red grouper. So nobody's complaining out there. They're getting hogfish in the 30 to 70 foot range by boatloads. It looks like from all the pictures that I'm getting sent to me, and the guys that are also in that same vicinity, they're catching all kinds of snappers, anything mangrove snapper, vermilion, etc. So it's not a bad fishery overall. The guys offshore, they're most certainly having to pick their days, where inshore sometimes we can at least go find a place to hide out of the wind. But redfish seem to be doing pretty well. Snook bite is a little slow, but a lot of guys are just plain not targeting them because the water temperature has been down so much, and they just don't want to stress the fish.
Right.
But looking good. We got probably good weather till at least Thursday. It's going to blow again, but it won't be cold on Thursday. It'll be nice. So I'm hoping to get out and find a little honey hole that's warm and sheltered, and maybe catch a few fish myself. So,
Ray, it's funny. It's funny to me, but you mentioned that guys are not snook fishing because they don't want to stress these fish that are already much colder than what they're used to. We're starting to see some semblances of awareness when it comes to fish's overall health, aren't we? Aren't we starting to see? I've seen a time, because I'm old, like you have, that if we could catch snook when they were vulnerable, buddy, we'd pound every one of them. But times are getting a little better in that regard, aren't they?
I remember the day, I think there's still always going to be those few that if the getting is good, they're going to go get them, kind of thing. And that's unfortunate. It's short-sighted. There's a lot of guys, and particularly my friends, who have seen both sides of it. They grew up just like you years ago when the fishing was phenomenal, and we just took it all for granted. And now we get out offshore, inshore, whatever the case may be. Yeah, we're going to probably still catch fish, but we're working hard to do it. Whereas before it was just a gimme. So, it takes everybody to do their part to get everything going in the right direction again.
You're exactly right, Cap. You're exactly right. Ray, as always, we appreciate it. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
You betcha. And I hope I got a little more sun on my bun by then.
Me too. Captain Ray Markham. Academy Sports and Outdoors' mission is to provide fun for the whole family by carrying all the best gear from top brands including Columbia, Yeti, Costa, Penn, Shimano, and so many more at prices that you're going to love. Whether you're planning on spending the day at the beach, hosting the friends in the backyard, reeling in a big fish, or gearing up for the game, Academy has a wide assortment of sports and outdoor products that will guarantee you that you're going to have fun out there. Hey, Academy has just opened their new store in Panama City, and look out, Tampa, here they come. You're next on the list. It's a dynamic and fun shopping experience while also offering convenient options such as buy online, pick up in-store, and free shipping on most online orders over $25. When shopping at Academy, customers are going to be able to take advantage of some great in-store services. How about they'll assemble your grill for you or your bike? How about scope mounting, bore sighting, line winding and spooling, propane exchanges? They've got the pros to get it done, and the ability to purchase hunting and fishing licenses. With Academy's best price guarantee, if you find a better advertised price anywhere, not only will Academy match it, but they'll beat it by 5%. Until the new store in Tampa opens, you can shop online at academy.com or through Academy's mobile app. You can sign up for email alerts, receive digital ads, offers, and exchange with Academy's social media accounts. Academy Sports and Outdoors. Right stuff, low price, every day. Let's head up on into the Big Bend to one of my favorite guys in the whole world, Captain William Toney. Skip, how we doing?
We're doing good. You know what? If we could just get this temperature to like raise up about 10 or 15 degrees, just a little bit, I'd be much happier.
Well, that's a lot of us, but that's why we're going to be so thankful when April gets here. That's what that means.
Absolutely. Well, I can tell you one thing though, it's water temperature today out here off of Homosassa here on the Big Bend was a whopping 57 degrees.
That's pretty cold for you guys. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty chilly. And yeah, no fish kill or anything like that. I think all the dumb snook got froze around Christmas. So the rest of them are all up in the springs. But have been finding some really nice redfish. And if you're patient enough, or if you really want to try to get one on fly, this will be the time to do it. You just got to pick the day where there's light wind and the water clarity. It's just like floating in air is how clear it is. And we got into some redfish, which were on the outside keys today that would not bite. Not a live shrimp, tickling their nose, nothing.
Wow.
They were too lethargic.
Wow.
Now, the good news was I moved inshore. So I moved in, if we can imagine and do a picture in our minds of outside keys, and then moving to the hard edge of what forms the coastline, and about 2 keys east of that in some of the bigger bays that block that wind.
So you're on the west coast, so that's moving further inshore.
Inshore, yep,
Okay.
absolutely.
Gotcha.
Come on in there and find you some bays that block that wind and catch that southern sun and those warm coves. And I can tell you what, running there, you better have your jacket on. But once you get inside there, one thing I do look for, you'll see the protected coves that are warm by looking at where the birds are.
Right.
You'll see a lot of pelicans, you'll see egrets, herons, they'll all be gathering in the warm coves, and that's where you're going to find them fish. And we did find 2 or 3 nice schools of redfish that we actually caught about 5 or 6 out of today, throwing live shrimp. Again, it's a very, very slow fishery, methodic. If you try to get in there too quick, they're going to scatter. But if you take your time, pull in there, and set up and get patient, those fish will wad up, and they're mixed in with mullet and black drum. And they were eating live shrimp today, but I was sitting there thinking if I had a fly caster, they could probably have a blast today. So, you know, that's this time of year where you kind of have to fish a little bit slower because it's cold. Now, if you want more action, then move further up into the rivers
especially toward the springs. We got some snook up there and jack crevalle and a lot of ladyfish up in that warm water. So you can practice your fly casting in there and get a lot of action. Or if you got some people in town that you just want to go out and spend a day with them bending a rod and maybe eat lunch on the river or something, it's a real easy deal. You won't even burn a gallon of gas.
Gotcha. Yeah, and we were talking about it earlier. I won't belabor the point, but David Voorhees, our Northeast action spotter, used to be a koi farmer. And
right.
He said in the summertime, he had to feed his koi twice a day.
Huh.
He said in the wintertime, if he tried to feed them twice a week, the second feeding would sink to the bottom, spoil, and ruin the water. That's
right.
how much difference in their metabolism between cold water and warm water.
Absolutely. And that's kind of how it was out there today. And I will say, it's still in my mind looking at that school of redfish, there was some bruisers in there, 30 plus inch fish.
Good fish.
And they were just not moving around, and they were staying right in that cove. Now, a couple times I got overzealous and just a little bit too close for comfort. And they didn't take off like a rocket, but they would just swim away.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times, too, I tell people in my boat, especially when it comes to fishing that real gin clear water, real cold water, movement in the boat, that little bit of sidestep, that displacement of the hole and everything, those fish will feel it, and they may not take off, but they're not going to bite. They know something's going on.
That pressure wake makes a lot of difference. You're absolutely right.
Yep. And then here on our near shore rocks, if you want some more action and you really want to brave the cold, even on a 75-degree day, once you hit that Gulf out there, you better put your, heavy gear on, because that chili coming off that water. We're getting a pretty good sheep's head bite on the near shore rocks using live shrimp.
Gotcha. Outstanding as always, William. We appreciate the heck out of it. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
I'll be right here, and I hope it's 85 degrees and I'm in shorts.
Me too. Captain William Toney from downtown Homosassa. I'll bet you don't even remember the days that all us cool kids would rub baby oil mixed with iodine to help us get even darker in the summertime. Being burnt was cool, and even if you weren't a surfing legend, you sure looked the part. Oh, man, if a bunch of us old guys paid the price for our vanity. We never knew the skin problem and health damage that awaited us. Today's fishermen have the options of being so much healthier in the sun than we ever thought of. Thanks in no small part to the Castaway Hat Company, who not only provides our podcasters with Castaway straw hats, but they make the coolest prints on the underside of the brims you ever saw. You may think your bimini top or T-top blocks the sun, but as an awful lot of us OGs can tell you, you can't have enough protection from sun damage. Do what we do. Put on the sunblock and put on your Castaway straw hat. You'll look the part of today's best anglers, and you'll even be helping the environment. That's because for each Castaway hat sold, the Castaway Company is going to pay to have 1 pound of trash removed from our waterways. The burning Florida sun won't be raced in your skin, and believe me, when you age a few years, you'll thank us old guys with a lifetime on the water. So go to CastawayHatCo.com and get your best sun protection today. The Castaway Hat Company. They've got a hat for every adventure. Now let's start sneaking on up into the northwest section of the state. That's where we'll find Captain Kevin Lanier from K2 Sport Fishing. Kevin, how are you?
Captain Rick, we're doing just great tonight. How about you?
Outstanding, my boy. For an old man, I'm rocking right along. Tell me what's going on with your fishing. I understand it's wintertime there, just like it is here.
Right. Well, good thing is Pompano just showed up. So there's been a few Pompano caught off the beach in the dock, so that's good. Quite a few redfish, keeper size, slot size are showing up and they're being caught. Saw a couple of sheep's head this week, and they turned up. The guys that are getting offshore, it's typical this time of year. Beeliners, porgies, releasing more red snapper than you can throw a stick at. And good time all the way around. You just got to pick your days. You know how it is this time of year.
It's funny you mentioned that, Kevin. I think I've probably caught 10 red grouper in my life up here. We don't see red grouper on the East Coast that often. I caught 5 in one day this week.
Well, it's better to be lucky than good.
Yep, and that's me. Yep, that's for doggone sure. But I tell you what, I was so impressed with your gag numbers over there. They're closed now. They're protected. But, boy, it seemed to me like you guys had plenty of them.
We did have plenty of them. The guys that did a lot of concentrating on gags did real well. Those of us on charters, it was kind of hit and miss. Some days we'd have a good gag day. Some days we wouldn't. So, not quite as productive when you're, running timed trips.
Sure. And you face the challenge of, you can tell people, all right, you got to get him up off the bottom in a hurry. But until they've experienced that, they don't know. You face the challenge of teaching that every day, don't you?
Oh, exactly. The number one mistake the charter boat people do is they sit on the rail, and when they get bit, then they stand up, then they start reeling. Yeah, I know. I watch it every day.
Oh, yeah. I know it. It must drive you crazy. I wouldn't blame you a bit, but it must drive you crazy.
One time we need to do a show on what not to do when you're on a charter.
Yeah, one of them is sit on the rail. I can tell you that much. I've been there if you're bottom fishing. Yep. Right. And it's funny, we talked about it a few shows ago, how some fish have game, some fish don't have game. That grouper knows where he wants to go the minute he feels that hook, doesn't he?
Oh, exactly. I mean, I tell people you got 10 seconds from the time you fill him on till the time you've either won or lost the battle.
Yep, that's right. I used to tell people all the time, if you're going to fight a blue marlin, pace yourself, try to stay calm, do all this. You're going to fight a grouper, you better win the first 10 seconds. If you do, you've got him. If you don't, you don't have a chance. So what are you seeing besides...
grouper are lazy, yeah.
Yeah, are you seeing anything much to it besides red snapper, or the red snapper just out of control?
Oh, they're out of control. Every time we get out there and we get on a good spot, it's red snapper. We have to move a lot to get away from the red snapper. But, this time of year, we don't have a lot of demand, so we're not doing a lot of offshore stuff. We're doing more inshore stuff.
Right. I got you. Okay. All right. Well, Cap, we sure do appreciate it. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
Oh, we'll be around next week. I do promise that.
And that's going to put a wrap on our trip around the state tonight. Kyle, things are starting to fall into wintertime, aren't they? The fish are slowing down. They're not biting inshore like they do in the summertime. You're not going to get much of a blow up on a surface lure right now. The water temperatures in the upper 50s around a lot of the area of the state, and that's really pretty cold. Offshore, the sailfish have settled into their wintertime pattern. If you've never been to Stewart to get in on that hot bite in the wintertime, let me encourage it. It's an awful lot of fun. Hey, I've enjoyed this evening. I hope you have too. Do me a favor, if you've liked it, go on any of your sources for your podcast and rank us and let us know how we're doing and get us some suggestions. If you got a question you want me to ask our action spotters, you can send it to rick@floridasportsman.com, or you can post it on the Florida Sportsman Facebook page. Either way, we will ask the questions and we will get you an answer. Until next week, for Yamaha, for Shimano, for Nosara Paradise Fishing, for Tournament Master Chum, and for Young Boats, I'm Captain Rick Riles, and we will see you on the rip.